Welcome back to Nothing But Football, ladies and gentlemen. Hope you're well. Welcome, of course. We're shooting from home in this one, as you can see. I'm in my studio. Sorry for the echoiness. But I promise you, this will be the last time. Don't worry. We'll be back. We'll be back at Leicester Square at the Three Lanterns next week. And then after that, things could be changing. Just you wait. But give us 2 weeks. Give us 2 weeks. And Nothing But Football will be going crazy. Joining me today, Ben and Henry, of course. Ben Bowman, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm excited. Things are changing. Apparently, I'm looking forward to that. And things are changing at Tottenham Hotspur. Let me tell you that right now. We are staying up. I believe 2 wins has done a lot for my mental health, and I'm feeling like a new man right now. I'm not gonna lie to you.
You know what? Ben has done really well there because that's the exact emotion, exact way he said it the first time. So well done to some drama school GCSE there. Yeah, I'm kind of worried actually that you guys might beat us when Chelsea play Spurs in a few weeks, but we might have the FA Cup by that point.
Could be safe by then, mate. Could be safe.
Oh, then we beat you. Henry Hill, how are you, mate?
I'm back in my insane asylum wallpaper room. So if you spend too long in here, you will lose your brains. A bit like Spurs. I think Spurs were in here for a bit this year, but maybe they've escaped. But yeah, Ben, I was at your training ground this week, and the mood is lifting. Let me tell you.
Is it?
I went up to Turkey Street, which is the appropriate name for Tottenham, I would say.
The cockerels, the chickens.
Turkey Street, and yeah, the mood is high. But you won't believe this. Earlier, Ben, I texted Zach and said, how about I just come to yours and we could film together in the same room?
Oh, I did not say.
Because this is the second eye roll in as many weeks.
Yeah, true.
He made up every excuse under the sun why it wasn't a good idea for me just to come to his and record this there, so that he had all the stuff there and ready to go. He's like, no. Bear in mind, I've been to his flat before. I've had a beer in his flat before. I call him a friend, and I hope he calls me one. But he wouldn't even let me over today. Can you believe that?
Something's not right and Nothing But Football. What's going on? There's a fractured relationship developing here, and I feel like the child caught in the middle. I don't really like it.
Yeah, you know when
Mum and Dad are arguing.
Mum and Dad are getting divorced again.
When Pat went away, he begged me. He said, "You can't go too." He said, "Whatever it takes to stay. We'll bring on this Ben Bowman guy." I said, "Whatever." You know, and what does loyalty get you? Nothing down the line.
Nothing, apparently.
So,
just for what it's worth, if you wanted to come and record it around my house, Henry, if you wanted a trip to Hertfordshire, you're more than welcome, mate.
Thank you. It feels like 20 Zacks versus 1 Henry at the moment. I feel overwhelmed.
No, look, the room's tiny, man. You couldn't have fit in. That's what I'm saying. Give me 2 weeks, and you guys can all come round.
I'm expecting big things.
There's a little hint. Just before we get on to the subject of this video, what I do want to say to you is I want to find out whether you guys would be interested in a little live Nothing But Football. Obviously, we normally film at the Three Lanterns. Me and Three Lanterns have been chatting. We've been chatting. Obviously, Champions League final not that far away. What do you guys think about the possibility of a little Nothing But Football live edition with you guys there, watching the Champions League final with us, doing a little Q&A, little chat beforehand, talking about football with some of you guys in Leicester Square? Does it sound cool? Does that sound something you'd be interested in? Of course, we have a few people as well. Of course, Ben and Henry hopefully will be there. I've actually not checked with them yet.
I was going to say.
But of course, I'll try and get some of the other ones.
I've actually got a apartment in Budapest booked from last year for presuming that Spurs are going to get to the Champions League final, so I might go over and hate watch actually. So
okay, fair enough. Well, more details maybe will come, but I do want to know what you guys at home, would you be interested in that? Please let me know in the comments below. But yes, without further ado, let's get on with today's podcast and video. As you can see by the title of it, we're going to be going through a few interesting players, guys who split opinion across the world and think and agree or disagree over whether they are underrated or overrated. That's the other word. That's the opposite. What I don't mind us saying on this, guys, is whether we actually do think, because normally I am a stickler to say you've got to pick an option. I'm going to give us the rated option that we do think, you know what, the opinion on them right now is fairly even. And sometimes if lots of people call him overrated and lots of people call him underrated, maybe that actually means he's fairly rated. So without further ado, let's kick things off with Manchester United's captain, the guy who I feel like every single year is the main topic around this conversation. Is Bruno Fernandes underrated or overrated, Henry Hill?
I think the very fact that where he's included in this conversation would suggest that he is underrated, because I don't think it's almost not worth arguing with people now if they don't think Bruno is an unbelievable. He's one of the biggest names in the Premier League. He's one of the biggest faces of the Premier League. I didn't agree with Adam McCullough about him being better than De Bruyne. That was a debate, wasn't it, the other day? I don't necessarily think they're the same player for a start. I think they're quite different. And it's hard because obviously he doesn't have the trophy cabinet that De Bruyne does. I'm a big advocate for the fact that a trophy cabinet doesn't dictate your quality as a footballer because there's so many stipulations that go into that. But yeah, Bruno is an exceptional footballer. And if he breaks the assist charts this year in a time when people say that strikers have got worse, that forwards have got worse, then I think it's an unbelievable solo achievement and testament to his ability. And it's not like he does this for just Man United. He does this for Portugal as well. Like he's excellent for Portugal, a Portugal team that could do very well at this World Cup. In my opinion, I don't see what they've got as many star players as we do, really, when you boil it down. So it's, Bruno, the only thing Bruno's guilty of is being potentially too loyal to Manchester United. And really, when you think of it in that sense, it's not the worst thing that's ever happened. If he sort of signs off his latter years of United with finally getting some trophies with an uplift of form under Carrick or whoever they turn to next, then it'll be this kind of beautiful redemption arc. And it's almost like, I'm not going to say it's like a movie for him, but it would be, he will have seen it all. He literally has seen it all at United. And I think throughout that entire period of chaos and distress and, the weight of expectation for playing United is so high. If at the end of this process, he comes off with a few pieces of trophies, he has won stuff. Yeah, it's not like he's won nothing at United. But at the end of this process, he sort of helps return United to the glory years. Then I think he will go down as an Old Trafford legend. And I don't think I don't think that phrase should be understated. An Old Trafford legend. We're talking, other than maybe Real Madrid's, whether you like it or not, the biggest club in the world. That's what we're talking about here. They've just had a very, very difficult period and potentially got swallowed up by the competitiveness of the Premier League. They maybe got drunk in their own aura from the Ferguson era. And obviously, that's a topic for another day, really, what happened to United. But yeah, I think through that all, Bruno's been amazing and he continues to level up and level up and level up. And if you remember last year, I think there were links to Saudi. I think there was a genuine discussion about him leaving the club. And instead, he's gone to a new level. He's playing in a much better position now, obviously under Carrick. I love Bruno, and I don't think there should be any debate whatsoever about his ability as a footballer. He is, without doubt, in the best 11 potentially in the Premier League right now.
Why does Bruno grind people's gears? Why is he a player that? Because I feel like genuinely he's been a shining light in at times a really disappointing Manchester United side, and seems to be a player that, for all the millions that Man United have spent, the tens of millions, the hundreds of millions that United have spent, for all the, promising players they've brought in and then they've not lived up to expectation, Bruno has been maybe one of the few that really has done. Why is it people always continuously kind of pick on him, I guess?
I think it's probably his personality on the pitch, isn't it? I think that's the thing that's wound people up. That's not me saying that that's what's ground my gears. In fact, I think there was a tweet doing the rounds recently from, I think it was Jack, mate, who said that who is the most unlikable player in the Premier League? I'll start Bruno Fernandes. And I was like, I think at a point in time, he used to irritate me, but I think he wouldn't even be close to like my top 10 now. I think because United have been poor, obviously by their own standards, like Henry said, kind of swallowed up in the competitiveness of all of it. I think what's actually shone through, if you watch Man United, especially over the last couple of years with how poor they've been, obviously a lot better this year, I think most sensible people have probably realised that it is just his competitiveness and his desperation to be that leader, to get Manchester United back to where they should be. I think he's been a bit of a victim of being almost not the face of their banter era in the sense that he's been anywhere near of a reason as to why that's happened, but he is their best player during their most unsuccessful period in certainly in all of our lives, and people love to revel in the kind of misery of that because of how much United were dominant when we were all kids, and it was just a bit much, I think, like people didn't like that. But yeah, I think that's why. But I think most sensible people have kind of come round to liking Bruno now, and especially as he just continues to deliver year after year, it gets to a point where you can't just run that gimmick anymore, and you actually have to just sit back and appreciate the talent that is there. I think for me, like, I would say fairly rated, because I just do genuinely really think he's a quality player, and I kind of give him, I think, the props that he deserves. But I think he's like what you said about the Adam McCullough thing. I think maybe some people put him on a pedestal that he doesn't necessarily deserve to be on, but that's obviously tribalistic loyalty to your own club and players. However, I think that was a great example of moving the goalposts and the trophy argument to suit your own opinion, because I think, as much as I really like Adam McCullough, I think he's someone that would have blasted Harry Kane for such a long time for being, not being as good as people say he is, because he hasn't won trophies. And now it's Bruno, and obviously they have won a couple of things, but now you're just massively shifting the goalpost. But I also think there are people that don't want to put him anywhere near those kind of conversations, and that's why he would be underrated, in my opinion. He's not as good as De Bruyne. He's not a top 10 Premier League midfielder of all time, but he is one of the best creators that we have seen in the modern era, and one of the best leaders. Again, this is a guy who was under Amorim tasked mainly picking the ball up off the centre halves and kind of trying to start attacks from deep, and maybe at times he was a bit too hero ball and trying to do too much sometimes. But now you've built a system around him to bring the best out of his best strengths in Michael Carrick, which is the best thing Carrick's done in terms of balancing that midfield to make United far more dangerous on the counter-attack, but also allow Bruno the platform to create the amount of chances that he does. And also with the Premier League assist record thing, people want to use that as a stick to beat him with, because X amount have come from set pieces. And although obviously there's a higher percentage of what Henry and De Bruyne did, people do lie when it comes to those statistics as well about those two, and say that none of them did. So he kind of exists in this bit of a grey area where, because he plays for Manchester United, who a lot of people don't like and don't want to see do well, and because he can be a bit of a volatile character at times, people don't want to give him the props that he deserves. Then people kind of just blatantly lie and move the goalposts to suit their narratives around him. And I just think he's I would say I fairly rate him, but I think I think Henry's probably right in terms of being underrated because of the masses kind of not giving him the flowers that he deserves.
I think just like on one thing that Ben said about the competitiveness, I think a lot of people point to that Liverpool game where he threw his toys out the pram, didn't he? That was the one where people were like, oh, look at him, he's just a bit of a brat, he's just whatever. You sort of just think, give the guy a break. Like, he's been through so much at that club at that point, and I think you're allowed to have one moment of fragility like that. I know people will find other examples, whatever. That's the most high-profile one there. It was an absolutely honking performance against their rivals, as it were.
Yeah.
But a lot of people point to that and go, "Oh, he's just a bit. We don't like him. He's not got it all." And I just sort of think you could point to loads of players. Like, it's no different to Rooney having his little hissy fit at the 2010 World Cup or something like that. Having a go at the fans, booing. Ronaldo's had multiple instances of throwing his toys out the pram. Yeah, the list could go on and on, really. Like, just look at Real Madrid at the moment. They're all arguing. As in, I just find it funny that people have pinpointed this one example as if it's like golden proof that this guy hasn't got the mentality to be one of the greats. And I sort of just think, at the end of the day, he's a competitive sports star. And to be honest, every other interview he ever does, I always think he comes across unbelievably well. I've never once thought in an interview that he's done, this guy's a total prick. He seems all right.
No, he does. He does indeed. And I think I don't know, I was going to say, I think more people are coming around to it, but then every now and again, the whole reason this is a debate at the moment is because it's normally one that leads it. I'm with you guys. I mean, if this is the kind of chart of being overrated and underrated, he's probably around here right now, just over the middle. Okay, then our next player we're going to chat about is somebody who at one point was kind of considered the right back of the season. There's definitely possibly a claim that he still could be, has been out with injury for a little while now. Jurrien Timber, somebody obviously started the season fantastically well this year. Ben Bowman, Jurrien Timber, where do you feel like he is on that scale?
I think Jurrien Timber is a bit of a victim of our constant need and desire to compare all the time. And this Reece James Timber thing has kind of almost because in Chelsea and Arsenal have kind of got this feud that's sort of been brewing over the last few years, where I think in previous years it was more about Tottenham and Chelsea having a big rivalry, and obviously Tottenham and Arsenal as well. But I think Chelsea fans, it feels like in the modern era, have almost shifted towards hating Arsenal that little bit more, which I think has added a lot of fuel to the fire when it comes to the debates around Caicedo and Rice, and obviously Timber and James as well, when actually they're totally different players that play in the same position. I think Jurrien Timber's fantastic. Like, I do think you've noticed the drop-off, although Ben White maybe does more to connect that right-hand side together a little bit from an attacking point of view. I think you've definitely noticed a drop-off defensively with Ben White coming into the team. Obviously, Arsenal have had a brilliant couple of weeks, but when Ben White kind of first came back, I remember the Bournemouth game was kind of getting done in behind a little bit. His positioning was a little bit, not what you'd expect from a player of his calibre. And I think Timber defensively, I don't think there's many better defensive right-backs in the world than what he offers, and he might not be of the quality of Reece James on the ball, and he might not be able to dictate the tempo of a game stepping into midfield as James can do and spray passes and unlock teams that little bit. But Timber also adds a hell of a lot in the final third as well in a different way. I think that he's always kind of in there chipping in with the goals. He might not be as good a crosser as James or someone like that, but I think Timber maybe this is a really difficult one, because I think maybe he's become a bit underrated because of the James Timber thing. But I don't know. I just think not to sit on the fence, but I think he's really good. Like,
do you not think sometimes we overpraise a player for their attacking quality and over hate a player for their defensive quality? So my point being, right, we will all sit here and love a fullback who can do something going forward and maybe forgive what they then have defensively.
Yeah.
But then in this same comparison thing, if there is equally as good as a player, but defensively, who is lights out better as a defender, as a fullback, but not so good going forward, it feels like sometimes we give him more criticism. Now look, Trent Alexander-Arnold, for instance, his criticism's he's always been overly criticised, maybe for his defensive part of the game. But I feel like generally with fullbacks, when they are a bit more defender first than attacker first, they get more criticism than someone that's going forward.
Yeah, I would agree with that, I think. But I think that is because of the context of the current Premier League climate, where we are clamouring for more of a attacking style. And I think Arsenal themselves have prioritised defensive solidity and have been a bit more pragmatic in their approach to go and be a top side, which they are on the precipice of kind of solidifying themselves as if they were to win a Premier League and Champions League double. So I think Timber is probably a bit of a victim of that. I'd probably agree. But again, he does contribute in the final third. Like, he's not as easy on the eye as someone like James. And again, their contributions in the final third come in different ways. But you could say the same about Reece James in the sense that, like, I don't necessarily believe this, but some people would make the argument that does being a more well-rounded, versatile player make you a little bit overrated compared to someone who is just absolutely excellent in their own position week in, week out, which I think Timber, by and large, is when he plays for Arsenal. I don't think you've seen Timber have many bad games, certainly from a defensive point of view. Sometimes attacking-wise, like I said, he doesn't maybe make that right-hand side kind of triangle click in the same way as what Ben White can do. But I think any Arsenal fan would want Timber in the team any day of the week, even if there are slight shortcomings in his attacking game compared to White. I think that's a fair statement you make. I'm probably right down the middle with Timber. I just think he's really, really good, and I think there is a definite noticeable drop off maybe in certain aspects of Arsenal's functionality as a team when he's not there.
Interesting. Henry, anything to add?
I've been looking at the Netherlands squads on Wikipedia, sort of trying to weigh up how successful they'll be at this World Cup. And obviously, they are lacking in midfield with the injury to Xavi Simons and creativity. And then their attack is like a bit random. Donny Marlon is playing really well at Roma, but then you've got Brobbey, Noah Lang, Gakpo and Weghorst, you sort of think. And obviously Memphis Depay as well. Like, it's really hard to figure out how good that's going to be. But then you go to the defence and you look at the players, Van der Ven, they've got there, Van Dijk, they've got like Frimpong, Nathan Ake, Paul Van Heck. And the reason I'm saying all of this is I look at their defence and think, if they can get that right at the World Cup, of which Timber will be a huge part of it, they're like any international team in the world would be happy with the defenders they've got available, and Timber's a massive part of that. Ben, I think I completely agree with Ben. Like, yeah, as long as they're defensive and solid. There was a point at the start of the season where Timber had 2 goals, 2 assists. He was one of the most creative players in the Arsenal squad going forward with Calafiori on the other side as well. They were really, it's just, again, I think it's just as the season's ground on, these guys have played an unbelievable amount of football, and I don't think he should be criticised for being a defensive style defender. And you look at that Netherlands squad, they've got him and Jeremy Frimpong, who I know like the optics on him have changed a lot over 1 year, but you've got two fundamentally different styles of defenders that can attack a game in a different way, which I think is quite interesting. So he is, all in all, he's underrated if we're talking about him.
Yeah, I'm probably leaning towards that as well.
All right, lovely. From an Arsenal player then to Man City player, someone who joined in January, and I think things might be slightly turning for him. Antoine Semenyo is somebody who I've seen come under a little bit of fire recently. If you look statistically in the numbers in terms of his output in front of goal, he has been a success for City. And I think he may not be the traditional winger that we might be used to City having. But I'm seeing maybe a little bit of criticism, especially obviously now that it looks like Arsenal may go on to do it and win the Premier League. And he's been a big, and one of his games against Everton didn't really necessarily help in that cause. We saw the likes of Jeremy Doku obviously coming up in the last moments of the game and having, scoring a fantastic goal. And him and Doku are almost opposites in wingers. Somebody who is so technically efficient in Doku and with the ball at his feet can kind of do whatever he wants, and someone like Semenyo, he's maybe a little bit more of a role player, somebody who you can, why he was so good at Bournemouth was being able to run on the break and have that space to go into, and sometimes where he's being asked to be a little bit more technically proficient, we're seeing him come up a little bit short. Where do we feel like we land at someone like Antoine Semenyo, Henry? Obviously he moved for 60 million quid. Where do we feel he is?
Is it 60 million? Because for me a lot of this depends on his price tag. It really does.
I can double check for you now, but I'm pretty sure it was around that. Yeah,
it was around that ballpark.
That was the buyout clause, wasn't it? Before he moved to before he moved, yeah, £64 million.
Okay, so the overlying numbers for him, or underlying, whatever way they're lying, the numbers which are lying are 15 goals and 4 assists in the league this year, for 2 teams, and again, I think people forget that moving club in January. For him to have hit the ground running and got those 5 goals, I know they've dried up a bit, and I know Marmoush did it as well. He sort of started off really strongly, if I remember correctly. I don't think it should be overlooked how hard that is to bed in, and I think he's maybe guilty of just how good Doku's looked and how much people enjoy Shirky's football at the moment, because obviously that Doku's scoring bangers week after week. You only had to look at that Everton game. Shirky, according to some people, is saving football single-handedly. So I think Semenyo's getting lost up within that, but he's much more direct than those guys. He's much more of a striker, really, in my opinion. Yes, he's less technically adept to those two, but there's a reason that he earned such a big move from Bournemouth to City, and I think a lot of your research, Zach, is coming from the Football Daily group chat, which has a few pessimistic voices when it comes to Antoine Semenyo.
My issue, right, will Antoine Semenyo be starting for Man City in 3 years' time?
Well,
not in my opinion.
No, maybe not. But I think really, if we just forget like that money's an issue for City. He was brought in almost as a shock factor for that attack. He was brought in because they were not scoring the level of goals expected of them, and there was almost like this clamouring in January for City to do something to fix that, and then they just go out and go, well, Semenyo's available. We can have him on a deal now. Like I think the price tag and the deal was more circumstantial than some kind of long-term super plan, and ultimately it doesn't. I don't think they're that bothered whether or not it's a massive success. Maybe he is a little bit overrated. Maybe he's the first one that could be considered overrated. But I still think, for example, like with Kudus probably out of the World Cup or certainly limping into it, I still think Semenyo could have an amazing World Cup for Ghana and really show what he could do. And we would all be going,
kind of thinks actually on on the international stage, he could have a huge impact for them. Like he's almost in ways like a really well-made player for a country like Ghana, who are going to be a little bit underrated, who are going to be wanting more of a direct player. Like he was at Bournemouth, right? Like he was at Bournemouth. It wouldn't shock me if he had a really good good summer for them. Where do you lie on the fence with Semenyo, Ben? Are you in that slightly over? And let's be honest here, like, I'm not saying he is overrated, nowhere near. I think maybe he's just like slightly. Again, if I bring out the scale, he's here.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think he's undoubtedly a quality player. I think that he is, again, in terms of the discourse around him, maybe a bit of a victim of the fact that the level of winger in the Premier League isn't not at the level that we're used to seeing over the past sort of 10, 15 years or so in terms of wingers that can really take the game by the scruff of the neck. I think Doku is definitely that. I think Doku is more important for Man City, especially when it comes to breaking down teams that are inevitably going to sit in against them kind of week after week. I think his two-way ability is second to none. I think if you can get him in more shooting positions like we saw the other night, I think he can be devastatingly dangerous. I think there's obviously been a lot of chat around his end product, whereas I think Semenyo is a different style in terms of the sense that if games are ridiculously open, I think that running over long spaces, his ability to get into the box and finish and kind of sometimes benefit off the great work of what someone like Doku can do, I think he can be equally as devastating. But I think it depends on game state really a lot of the time. It's almost like one doesn't work without the other, but I think Doku is more important for City than what Semenyo is. And Semenyo hit the ground running really well when he came into City, scored a fair few goals, got 8 goals for City in all competitions. But they have definitely dried up more recently. And I think maybe, again, he's a player that he's not necessarily used to playing at this kind of level, under this kind of pressure. So when the lights have kind of shone a bit brighter as they've got towards the end of the season, I think he's faded a little bit. That's not to say that give him more time working under Pep Guardiola at Man City and kind of getting used to that environmental pressure that City will obviously bring because of the fact that they are inevitably, if the charges don't come, they're going to be competing for things year after year. And sometimes it does take a year or so for a Pep kind of signing to settle. But I do think there isn't. I would say with Semenyo, I think as much as I think he's obviously undoubtedly a very good player, I don't know how much more you can get out of him, if that makes sense.
He's 26 years old, isn't he?
Yeah, I think Pep can. There's no doubt that Pep can make him more consistent, maybe. But I just think in terms of improving his ceiling as a player, in terms of his actual ability, I'm not sure how much more you can get. But I think I could see him being replaced in that City team, like in the next year or so. But again, to have someone of that quality to come off the bench, maybe in certain games, even though I don't think breaking down a low block is necessarily his speciality. He thrived in transitional chaos ball at Bournemouth, obviously. But then again, if games do become a little bit more like that for City, they've got a perfect kind of weapon to be able to take advantage of that. But I think that I think maybe because of the goals and assists that he has got, I think maybe his ability as a player is a little bit overrated, and I'm not sure how much of a difference maker he is compared to Doku and Cherki and those kind of guys. So I'd probably lean towards a little bit overrated.
It'll be interesting to see next season when fresh start, beginning of the new season, what that City team is come, say, November, right? And what crucial part he is playing within that, and whether maybe City almost build around it, and he does form this great partnership with Doku on the left and him being almost his counterpart and another finisher in the box for City. Obviously, it'd be very interesting to see what City do this summer as well.
Also, what I will say, sorry, just quickly on Semenyo, is that if you look at his minutes played for Bournemouth and Man City across the whole season, he's played more minutes collectively than anybody in the Man City squad. He's played basically double the minutes of Doku, who's obviously had injury problems, but I think Doku is maybe a bit more fresh coming into this back end of the season, whereas Semenyo, obviously, at Bournemouth with the style that they kind of played, maybe that's taken his toll on him a little bit physically, and maybe that's potentially contributing to this little decline towards the end of the season as well. So I think, like anything, there's context around all of these debates. Like, he's played double the minutes of Cherki as well across all competitions for Bournemouth and for Man City. So again, maybe he's just declining at the wrong time, whereas the others are peaking at the right time.
Yeah.
But maybe over the course of a season next year, if he gets a bit more rotated at City and they've got another option that can play there, maybe you'll see him a bit more fresh come the end of the season this time next year.
Okay, well, let us know what you guys think in the comments below as well of all these players. The next player I want to move on to, someone who could be on the move this summer, was in Madrid recently, has been crying out for a supposed Madrid move. Enzo Fernandez, let me know what you guys think of him. But obviously, he is a crucial player in this Chelsea system, somebody who I think maybe slightly overrates himself with how he's gone about the Real Madrid move. But what do you guys think, Henry? How... Is Enzo Fernandez overrated or underrated? You know, we're over 4 years or coming up to 4 years since his move to Chelsea now. Where does he lie on that scale?
I'm not his biggest fan, and that could be personal bias. He's been shuffled around a little bit. He's obviously been moved a bit further forward at times, been moved a bit further back. He's not a number 10, is he? He's not like a world-class number 10, in my opinion. And I don't think he's one of the best holding midfielders in the league either, really. I think I said it already, but to earn a move to Real Madrid, you have to be seriously impressive. Like, you have to do unbelievable things. And I don't think he's necessarily done that. Like I said, we just talked about Bruno Fernandes at the start and his level of consistency throughout all the troubles. And yet, in a year where Chelsea have really struggled, I haven't seen much from him to suggest that he's been... I know he had a good semi-final in the FA Cup a little bit.
He has moments. He can be a moment player every now and again, but sometimes he needs more.
But I put the FA Cup win more down to Leeds freezing than Chelsea doing anything particularly special in that moment. I'm sorry to say, Zach, you might disagree with me. But it's, I don't... Does he overrate himself? Without doubt. Like, is he... Yeah, it's really hard to say if he is fundamentally an overrated footballer because I don't know many people...
Where do you think people nowadays, where do you think people nowadays rate him in that? Do you think people kind of already have the assumption that he's maybe not the world-class level?
I think first and foremost, he needs more competition in that midfield at Chelsea. I've always felt that because Lavia's injury record is so sketchy, that it's always almost felt like it's set in stone that it's him and Caicedo side by side. And I think they've almost rested on the laurels of that being just the standard midfield partnership at the club. And I know that is successful in other clubs. I know that we've seen sort of set midfields in other places, but I don't ever feel like he's been truly challenged for his place at all in that side. And I do think there's been some complacency on that front. So, yeah, I think people have called massively on the idea of Enzo being an incredible footballer, but the transfer fee at the time didn't really make sense. He was pretty good for Argentina at the World Cup. He wasn't a £120 million go-get-me midfielder after 6 months in Benfica, wherever it was. So you can tell I'm just not his biggest fan, and I might get told off in the comments for that. But I just think he is just fundamentally.
He can have moments like he can have games, and he can have moments where I think he looks fantastic, and there's that ability there, or there is that level there to be unlocked. And I do wonder sometimes whether he is a player who, if he was playing with better players, or in a system where maybe he's not meant to be the guy that has to try and win every single game, that he might come out a little bit better. And obviously, if you're playing in a better team, you're going to be winning more games, so maybe the PR around you is going to be better generally. But I do feel like he can be a really nice facilitator. There were moments for a long, long time, and at the start of this season, I felt like he did it a lot, and throughout this season, maybe it's happened less. But he was kind of becoming that late crashing of the box midfielder, that Frank Lampard-esque goal where he'd be found and he'd be able to pick it up. The Leeds goal in particular, it was that exact same run. And as the season's gone on, we've seen that less. Maybe that's something to do with Maresca, maybe that's something tactically. You mentioned there when he first came through, he was in his first 6 months when Chelsea bought him after January, he was unbelievable in that deeper role. Then he got moved further up. For a long time he was being used as an 8, where he was kind of being asked to do everything, but not being able to maybe be honed in on the particular things he was very, very good at. And then now we see him, play more in this 8 role. I mean, the game against Forest, it was a midfield of Caicedo, Lavia, and Enzo. And my God, they just got absolutely ran ragged half the time, which cannot be happening. But yeah, I mean, I don't if someone said to me he's slightly overrated, I wouldn't be batting too many eyelids.
What is he very good at, in your opinion? What are?
I think his passing. Is good. Like, I think his passing. I think when he is in that final third, he can pick out a really creative pass. Like, even from deep. Like, again, I mentioned that time, that 6 months when he first joined in that sixth role, he was able to dictate play really, really well. This is actually a time before Caicedo was at the club. And, I'm not putting any blame on Caicedo in that fact, but he was able to, and again, he was able to do that in a team that was really bad and obviously didn't do very well under Graham Potter. But he was able to dictate the midfield a little bit. He was able to control the ball. He was able to ping it out 60 yards down the right flank and do some good stuff in that sense. Weirdly enough, there aren't many midfielders nowadays, I feel, like him, who is being asked to do so much of both ends, of like go and put in lots of tackles and try and win the ball back high up in midfield, but also go and press super high, but also then be creative asset. Like, I sometimes look at his role at Chelsea, and you're right. I don't think he's he's kind of being asked to do everything and not being given some sort of specific notions on what to do. So yeah, I don't know. Ben, is there anything you'd add?
Not really. I don't really. He's a player that I don't really know where I kind of stand that much.
Have you ever, Ben, before a game, gone into it and thought, "Oh, Enzo Fernandez is in the team"?
What, as in
keep an eye on him?
What,
as a rival
if
fan,
they're playing against Spurs, or like
exactly,
generally?
Yeah. Have you ever looked at it and been like, "Oh, Enzo Fernandez is in the team," or like, "Okay, we've got to keep an eye," like you might have done with Cole Palmer, for instance?
Not really, but he's always had good games against Tottenham. Like, I remember the 4-3 at White Hart Lane last year, where Palmer scored a couple of penalties. But Enzo Fernandez was brilliant in that game. He scored the winner to make it 3-2, and then obviously the game that swung it back in Chelsea's favour to get to 3-2. Again, I think there's things that he's very decent at, like crashing the box, arriving late. I actually think he probably is better closer to the striker. I don't think he's necessarily creative enough to nail it fully down as his role, though. Like, I think that's where Palmer should be playing. Even though, again, Palmer at the moment is obviously his form's just fallen off a cliff.
Overrated.
But I just think Chelsea have got maybe. I think Chelsea got a lot of work to do. What I would say. The only thing I can add, I think Chelsea have got a lot of work to do in terms of finding the right balance in that midfield to make everyone happy and get the best strengths out of everybody. But I think there's a good chance that Enzo does leave in the summer. I'm not sure he's worthy of a move to Real Madrid at this point. Certainly not for the price tag that Chelsea would probably want for him. Or I don't think he's worth the price tag that he went for in the first place as well. But sometimes a lot of these players aren't. There's just so much money going around in football these days. That doesn't make it a shrewd investment necessarily to do that. But sometimes when you are at that top table and you want to play it, like, you do have to pay over the odds for them. As you probably did with Caicedo as well, who I think is a better player than him. But I'm not, again, sure he's worth the £115 million for how inconsistent he's been across the whole of this season. I think he's a good player. I think he's probably overrated a bit by Chelsea fans. But then again, I don't really know what Chelsea fans as a whole's opinion on him is, and I feel like that's maybe changed a little bit because of how he's ran his mouth about wanting to go to Real. So I'd lean towards overrated, but
he's quite a streaky player. The more you think about it, actually, he's very streaky.
So is Caicedo, I think, as well. I think Caicedo.
I would say I think people are.
He's been really poor.
He's had a bad 2 months, but he's had a great 2 years.
Yeah, but again, the way that Chelsea fans talk about him, though, like, this was people saying that he's the best midfielder in the world in the first half of the season. It's just like the best midfielder in the world doesn't do that.
I think just because I think saying that statement then doesn't mean that it with his performances now doesn't mean it wasn't right.
But people were saying it was like ridiculous to say that. I remember the Jamie Carragher thing on Monday Night Football where Carragher rightly gave Caicedo his flowers and was like, he got asked, is he the best midfielder in the league? And he was like, oh, he's very good, but he's very close, but I'm not sure he's there. And then Chelsea fans took it.
But Jamie Carragher also then called Enzo Fernandez the best midfielder in the league at the start of the season.
Did he?
Yeah, he did.
I thought he was. I mean, around that time, this was like, I think it was just after Chelsea beat Liverpool, where Caicedo scored that absolute thunderbolt. Yeah, he said Declan Rice was the best midfielder in the league, and I think with Declan Rice, it's like, again, he might be a player that could come up in this. I don't know, but like, people want to bring him down and talk about him, but look what Rice is doing under the physical demands of basically playing in every minute all throughout the season, and how high a level he's contributing at in the big games. And I think that I'm not seeing that from the Chelsea midfielders that are put on the same pedestal as him, in my opinion, that went for basically the same amount of money as what Rice did.
No. Again, that's not what I'm saying. Like, I'll correct myself as well for what Jamie Carragher actually said. He said in February
He's the worst midfielder.
That he's right up there with the best in the Premier League on current form, and I don't think anyone will argue with that.
Current form though. Like Enzo Fernandez has had really good patches.
But that's the same. But I think like if someone argues now that I'm going to the Caicedo point less than Fernandez point. I think saying Caicedo was one of the best. It was one of the best midfielders in the world, if not the best in the league. Back in what was it? October, November, when it was around that Arsenal game, wasn't it? The one at Stamford Bridge. I don't think that's that crazy to have said, you know, and looking back on it now doesn't mean it wasn't right just because he's had a bad time. You know, if we get to next season and we're in February and Declan Rice and Arsenal you know, again, I'm just making up a scenario, but they're in fourth position or fifth position and they've dropped off massively. Does that mean that people are saying Declan Rice has dropped off? Wasn't
maybe,
well
but
now?
I think these are hypotheticals that you can't label at Rice. Whereas we've seen enough of like.
But people do label at Rice all the time.
No, I don't think it's right. I don't think it is right, to be honest. And I think that with Fernandes and Caicedo, they've both been at Chelsea for long enough. Caicedo's been at Chelsea the same length of time that Declan Rice has been at Arsenal. Enzo Fernandez has been at Chelsea longer than Declan Rice has been at Arsenal. And Declan Rice has never had a drop-off to the level that either of those two do. So to suggest that they are better, I'm not saying you're doing this, but I do see it.
I'm definitely not.
No, but I think I don't know. Maybe we should just move on. But I just think that I don't know how much more I have to add about Enzo Fernandez. But like I just think that the way. My point is, I think the way that Chelsea fans speak about him, and you're always going to big up and overhype and overrate your own players. I totally get it. We all do it. Everyone's done it. But I just think that the players that they then compare him to, that have put together a much better catalogue of consistent performances over the course of the same period of time, I don't think they sit at the same table at the moment as someone like a Rice. Even though I think Caicedo on his day is probably as good as Rice, but they're different players as well. It's a bit like the Timber James thing. Like it's, maybe we should move on.
Okay, we'll move on to the next one then. Because I got Thiago at Brentford. Obviously done very, very well this season in the Premier League. There's something I can't shake off. I have to admit it. Yeah. When I watch Igor Thiago, there's something about him where I'm like, this guy can't be as good as he is. I like, you look at the numbers he scored this season, and maybe it's the Brentford effect, right? Maybe it's the Brentford effect of it doesn't matter who's up top. Henry Hill could play up top for Brentford. He'll get 10 goals in the Premier League season. I don't know about that. And cost Man City nothing.
I think he would, man.
I don't know if it's the Brentford effect, but like, there's something about Igor Thiago where I'm like, is this guy an elite striker? It's a hell of an achievement to score the amount of goals he has this season, and something that is worth maybe getting noticed upon, and rumours of a move, whatever it is. But at the same time, I feel like he might be slightly overrated. Am I crazy saying that, Henry?
The thing is, I haven't seen Thiago linked with any other clubs. It's not like he scored all these goals and there's all these transfer rumours suggesting that clubs are going to come in and pay 60, 70 million pounds for him, which is when it gets a bit pie in the sky.
There's been a few, but like I think there was a bit the other day about like Chelsea and apparently someone else. But again, this always happens with a player where they have that kind of hot streak, and then naturally, as we get to the transfer window, the rumour mill hots up. I don't think it was from any real credible source. I don't genuinely believe that Chelsea or Liverpool or Arsenal or whoever at that kind of top table, or Man United, will be genuinely looking at Thiago. I think a lot of the stuff that again maybe fuels the narrative around Thiago being overrated and why on earth would these clubs go for him?
Should they be looking at him?
No, not in my opinion. Not in my opinion.
22 goals in the Premier League season, man, it can't be laughed at.
I mean, who knows? Who knows? I just feel like we've seen so many strikers like this that maybe then don't go and deliver at the top. But again, it's all about kind of game states, right? Is that Brentford a lot of the time, because of the way that they've played under Frank, which has kind of seeped again into the way that they play under Keith Andrews as well, is that they will invite teams onto them and then be able to use the pace on the break of the likes of Sharda and Ouattara, and then make good decisions in the final third to generate high XG opportunities, which Thiago has actually missed quite a lot of as well this season. And there's been the whole narrative around him when when the Sky Sports cameras are on that he doesn't deliver, but when it's Saturday 3 o'clock at the G-Tech that he's always banging in the goals.
There's a lot of 3 o'clock games though, mate. A lot of 3 o'clock games.
Yeah, no, of course he's been brilliant for them this season.
No, I get what you mean.
I do think if he was to go and play for a team like a City or an Arsenal, like a top side that for the most part these teams are going to try and sit in and try and hit them on the break and not really take the game to those top teams. I don't know whether Thiago would be able to stand up at that kind of level to have that level of movement in the box or kind of grab a game to be able to do something that would make him a successful player at like a big club. But he's done his job for Brentford, and that's all they can ask for and their fans can ask for. So.
Yeah, he's ending the season as the top scoring Brazilian in a Premier League campaign, which is pretty nuts achievement. I mean, he could ultimately play his way into the Brazil World Cup squad. I saw like it said, he scored on his Brazil debut, then you see it's a penalty and you sort of think, well, not quite scored. Well, obviously it's a goal, but it's not.
Someone's got to score him, man.
The point is, I think we need to see another season of him at Brentford. I think
definitely agree with that.
Given that he was injured for the entire first campaign that he came in, because let's have it right. Like he banged them in at Bruges as well. I think he
did a lot of penalties at Bruges though as well. If we want to give that same kind of caveat, but let's think how many goals did Ivan Toney get in his pomp at Brentford? What was his most in a season? I've got it here. His most in a Premier League season was 20.
That's
got
pretty
4
good.
assists as well. Following year after all the stuff that happened, he got 4. But there is just something about the Brentford effect of whoever ends up playing up top, whether you're Visser, whether you're Tone, and maybe that is something to look at. If you're a club looking about look at the effect, look at how Visser has worked out at Newcastle. Maybe that's a bit more of an issue of how Newcastle have been this season than someone like Visser's time there. But Bournemouth at Man United's worked out pretty well, I would suggest. But yeah, he's a funny one. But Henry Hill, is he overrated or underrated?
Brentford have never really had, like, their goals have always come from their strikers. Do you know what I mean? They've never it almost feels like the entire function of their team is to get the ball to their striker. That maybe that's part of the reason. But I think he's fairly rated. I need to see one more year from him to see what he's really all about. But I don't think he's as technically good as Ivan Toney, for example. I think
I totally agree with that. Toney was a better player than him.
Yeah, Tony's a better player than him, and like he's scoring for fun in Saudi Arabia, which I know a lot of people are, but he's genuinely doing the business over there.
Yeah, if you take away Thiago's penalty goals, he would be on 14, which would be less open play goals than João Pedro, the same as Semenyo, just a little bit more than Gyökeres, 2 more than Danny Welbeck, for example. So
it's not bad though for what is really his first season.
No, you can't scoff at 22 goals. Like you can't. But I still think there are limitations to him as a player that wouldn't make him succeed at a big club if they were to go in for him, which I don't actually believe they would. So if he wants to be a mid-table pushing for Europe striker, I think he'd be all right.
Okay, let's move on to another club. I just mentioned them, Newcastle United. I want to go with Bruno G. I was thinking about Voltemada for a little while, but I want to go with Bruno G. Somebody who actually could possibly be on a move this season. Has been injured, or next season, has been injured this season. I feel like he's always given quite a lot of praise, and rightfully so as well. We can keep this one pretty quick because I think it probably is what I'm about to say. Is it just rated?
Underrated.
He's quality.
Wow.
He's unbelievable.
Yeah. I love Bruno G. I think he's the heartbeat of that Newcastle team. The difference with and without him is unparalleled. I think that Tonali kind of took some of the plaudits a little bit from Bruno, despite the fact that Tonali has had excellent performances for Newcastle. I still think Bruno's the better player, and that Newcastle team just doesn't work without him, really. I think Bruno's top, and if he was 2 years younger, I think that I would not be surprised at all if he went to Man City or to Liverpool or to Arsenal he could still do it now. I just think that maybe in terms of like the money that Newcastle would ask for compared to what a team would be willing to pay, given the fact that he's 29? 28. I mean, still, I mean,
I'm surprised you say underrated though. I feel like I do like your point about Tonali. I do think that could be. I think that is a very true point. But I do feel like I've never seen anyone kind of go like, "Oh, Bruno G is an absolute stinker," like, or maybe not to that degree.
Maybe he is just fairly rated. I just think he doesn't get the flowers that he deserves. To be honest, I think he's a top player. Bruno G. I think he's absolutely quality.
Henry Hill, if I was to give you Voltemada,
what do you mean if you were going to give me him?
What would you say he's overrated?
I think
or
I just say I feel
underrated?
sad, to be honest.
I feel desperately sad for him. I thought he was quality when he joined. I really don't understand what's happened. I know he's got a bit of an identity crisis because he wants to just kind of do a Harry Kane and drop deep and be that kind of guy, when really he's a big lump who should be out front just knocking the ball in with his head, because that's like when he's been at his best. I really think they should go again next year with him. Whatever's happened. But
there was rumours today that they are possibly open to, or like his team are open to a new challenge.
It doesn't.
It's one of those classic ones. It's one of those classic ones where it was like he's open to a new challenge, but he's also willing to stay and really try and make it work at Newcastle. So it's just an open-ended question.
I actually just think Newcastle just need a big reset. They just need to get to the end of the season and take stock of what's happened. Obviously they're going to sell a few players. They've been screwed over by their recruitment department, and I know that people might say Eddie Howe's part of that as well, but they've fundamentally spaffed a load of money up the wall on like the Vissa deal. Do you remember the Vissa deal? They went in bidding 25 million. Brentford said no. And then they're like, all right, then 35. Brentford said no. Next thing you know, they've just buckled and paid, 60 million, whatever it was, 55.
Yeah, it's an absolute power play of the century, that, isn't it, from Brentford. They had their fucking pants down.
And it's the same with Stuttgart as well. Like, it was very obvious that Newcastle had all this money and they were fishing out for a strike. I mean, I think the Bayern Munich president even said this as well. It's like, why on earth would you ever pay that much money for
Voltemada?
Like, why would you do that? So Stuttgart have basically just gone to them, all right then, 80 million, and they've gone, yeah, fine, yeah, that makes sense. So they've been, both those players, but Voltemada in particular has been put under an awful lot of pressure based on their price tag and the expectation that they're going to replace the generational team. And when the results start slipping and don't go your way, I don't think that he is the reason that Newcastle have been bad.
No,
this
I agree.
Year. I think there are so many other faults in that side. The defence has been fractious and has chopped and changed throughout the season. Like Livramento and Hall have both been injured at different points. I think the centre-back partnership, like Dan Burn, is clearly not the player he was last season as well. I think even their goalkeepers changed multiple times. There's been no consistency to Newcastle starting 11 all year. There's been no identity on that front, and what that happens ultimately is it catches up with you, and then you see the team kind of starting to break down, and Voltemada's been a victim of that. And like Newcastle, when it's going wrong, it's not the easiest place to play football because they're obviously such an impassioned fan base. And like, just look at Spurs. Spurs have had a similar kind of, just never really playing the same team. Things flipped on their head from last year, having to rely on Archie Gray and stuff. So yeah, I'm willing to give Voltemada, I don't want to say he's underrated because obviously he hasn't necessarily performed, but I did see enough at the start of the year to suggest that they've got a good footballer.
To see something, yeah.
They've got
everyone fell in love with Voltemada, didn't they? And I think that's his personality on the pitch and maybe off it as well. And obviously scored a lot of good goals. Obviously a very technically good player. Yeah, I think Emery's right. I just think he's a bit of a victim of the fact that it's all just fallen apart a little bit at Newcastle this year. And I think maybe next year, if Eddie Howe is still there, and it might be another classic thing of just like Newcastle have a year out of Europe and all of a sudden they look like a really competent side again if they've still got most of the nuts and bolts of it together. But it does look like maybe this summer is maybe where a few key parts of that could potentially leave. So it's about how they then go and replace them. And they might need to maybe try and make some money back on Voltemada to be able to rebuild that squad again. But yeah, he would be, I'm not going to lie, he'd be a bit of a hear me out kind of signing for Spurs if we stay up. In terms of the way that
be a lot of money to get him though, isn't it?
Yeah, of course. But like in terms of the way that like De Zerbi likes to use his number 9s and someone that can drop in and link the play, and also the thing is with Newcastle is that because they don't really play with that natural number 10 either, I feel like a lot of the time there's no one really close to him. Like he can kind of play off and combine with.
Well, for a long time, it was said that once Vissa's back from injury, they're going to be amazing together because he'll be the one that's in the 10 and Vissa. It just hasn't.
I think he needs to. It needs to be a bit of a 4-4-2 kind of jobby with like Voltemada. I think someone needs to run back the big man, little man strike partnership for him to be able to kind of show exactly what he's best at. I think genuinely, like I think if you had someone like De Zerbi who really likes to use his 10s very close to the striker, I think that almost playing with a bit of a 2-up-2. He did that with João Pedro, didn't he? Quite a lot, almost as the 10 a lot of the time. And So
Honestly,
I like Voltemada. I just think that obviously overrated because of the price tag and the way he has dropped off, but it's very circumstantial, I think, as well.
Vissa and Voltemade were like an arranged marriage, which just hasn't worked out. Do you know what I mean? But
Yeah, literally, yeah.
thrust together at the end of pre-season. Season's already going.
Yeah.
They're like, right, you two. Vissa, do you remember what you did with Mbermo? Just do it again with this guy. And yeah, they've gone like, look at this poster of Crouch and Defoe. You two are just going to emulate that dynamic partnership and just knock it down to each other. Like, hold on a second. I just think it's really, I feel really unfortunate for him. But if Voltemada wants a new challenge and wants to come to Fulham, for example, I would 100% have him there. Again, I just think like there was enough at the start of the year to suggest that there is a good striker in him. It just, Newcastle have a responsibility to figure that out. And like the final thing I'll say is, it reminds me of like the narrative around Kai Havertz at Arsenal, who has flip-flapped between being a complete flop to being an amazing, undroppable striker up front who's going to be the saviour of Arsenal's team this year. Like the whole reason they went and got Gyökeres is because everyone had enough of Havertz being the leading striker. So it's just, it's funny how attitudes and feelings towards certain players switch in an instant. And I do think that we could feasibly this time next January, let's face it, Newcastle can have less football. They can focus a bit more on their domestic form. I can feasibly see Voltemada being sung as a much better striker. But again, this will probably be one of the, when I might get clipped and someone will message me this in 6 months and say you're completely wrong. And that's just the way it goes. But it's, yeah.
Well, that's the battle, mate. That's the beauty of the game.
Yeah.
We've got two more players' names to go through. This one, Aston Villa's Morgan Rogers. Where do we stand on him? Is he overrated, underrated? Because he has dropped off a little bit of recent, hasn't he, Ben?
Yes. Overrated, but capable of brilliant things, as you saw in the first half of the season. I do think he is a bit of a system player, to be honest. I think when Emery's Villa are playing at their best, when he's got Tielemans and Kamara in the team that are able to kind of feed him those balls through the lines and he can come run into a little bit of space. But I think maybe if people figure Villa out or sit off them a little bit more, then he doesn't quite come into the game as much. I would be surprised, even though all the chat in the first half of the season was that he was on the radar of every big club, seemingly, in terms of like, we could spend 100 million on this guy. I'm not sure that people would do that now. He has unbelievable talent. Like, he's very hard to stop when he's in full flow, but I'm not sure he's, again, it's a little bit like what we were saying earlier. Like, if he went to Man City, for example, where they are facing a low block a lot of the time and have to kind of break through that, yes, he's got a few cute, creative, little clever passes in them, but you'd much rather have Shirky in the team than Rodgers if you're Man City on a weekly basis trying to break teams down. I'm not sure he's worth the money that Villa would demand for him. I still think there's obviously a very good player in there, but I don't think... you could make an argument that someone like... Is Gibbs White a better player than him? I think he probably is. Is he as good as...
Can play a bit deeper, Gibbs White as well, can't he?
Is he as good as Abere Eze? I'm not sure. Even though Eze's taken a while, obviously, to get going, but it's kind of classic Eze in terms of what he does. I don't know. I still believe in Morgan Rogers. I still think he's very good, but I would lean towards overrated. I just think that he needs to figure out and mature in his game to be able to cope with all game states, in my opinion. And I think that when he has a bad game as well, which he's having a lot of for Villa at the moment, like that everything just goes wrong. Like he just can't seem to pass a ball 5 yards. I think he's not playing with a lot of confidence at the moment, to be honest, as well. And I think a lot of Villa fans, saw some Villa fans at the weekend that were like, if someone wants to come and pay like 80 million for this bloke, then they've almost like, you can have him. Like, he's not, the narrative I think has flipped on him in the Villa fan base a little bit as well.
Be interested to see, obviously, today, at the time of recording this, when the video goes live, we'll know the result. But obviously, they've got the second leg against Forest, 1-0 down currently.
The battle
if he
of the
can
two
step up for that.
rotating, cheating, match fixing sides. Is that right? Is that
Hey,
what we're doing?
I did not say that.
That was absolutely ridiculous. And I'm so
Forest's
glad
rotations.
I've just seen
good players everywhere.
I've just seen De Zerbi in his press conference has just called it out and said that nobody said anything when Forest made 8 changes, but when Villa do it, all of a sudden it's crimes against football and all this kind of stuff.
He's
like, I know Forest played a lot better, but What's that?
He's watched one of your videos. He's ripped your script, I'd say. Ben, so.
Yeah, he has. He has.
Henry, would you spend, if you one of the big clubs, would you spend 70 million on Morgan Rogers?
No.
No, okay. All right, that's it. We'll leave it at that one. Okay, the final player then, and I'll let you take the reins on it, Henry Hill. He's going to be vital for England this summer. It's another player who I think this whole concept of overrated, underrated forms around, like Bruno. Declan Rice. Declan Rice. What do you think, Henry?
I've noticed that with Arsenal's recent struggles prior to their redemption, that everyone's and like basically I saw a lot about the PSG Bayern game going, oh, you can shove your Declan Rices up your arse kind of thing, like this is real football, and I think it is totally absurd. I cannot understand where this attitude towards Declan Rice has come from. He was just voted on a wide scale vote in the world like 11, wasn't he, or whatever that kind of card thing was that we did for your 20+1. Zach, I think Declan Rice is widely recognised as one of the best holding, well, whatever kind of box to box midfielders out there at the moment. And this is going to sound like lamely patriotic, whatever, but I think he's quite English in the way that he approaches it. It's not even about his attitude. It's just, you're right, there's not a kind of loads of step overs. He's not a Vitinha, do you know what I mean? Who's going to very delicately sweep the ball around. He's not a Fabian Ruiz who sort of glides everywhere. Like Declan Rice is his own. He's got his own style and
he's a bulldog. He's a bulldog.
Qualities, but he is more than that. Like his delivery, his passing, his tenacity. I mean, let's not forget that at West Ham he was known as it was always his block numbers. It was always like he's done X amount of blocks and X amount of tackles. Like the evolution in his game to adapt and become a player that can surge forward, score goals, score free kicks. As Ben said earlier, step up in the biggest games, deliver time and time again. Like Declan Rice, Rice has probably played more football than Doué, Kvaratskhelia, and whoever Ousmane Dembele put together. Like he has played an unbelievable amount of football for Arsenal. And to be honest, when they were struggling to get the wins, it almost felt like they were letting Rice down. Do you know what I mean? When that team were not showing the consistency they need to, because they should be clear in this league, let's be honest. This should not be a title race. They should have done and dusted this ages ago. And I don't think you can blame Rice for that at all. And the final thing I'll say on Declan Rice is, when you look at the £100 million transfer, of which there are many, of which most are an absolute waste of money, Declan Rice is one of the true value for money 8-figure signings. Sorry, no, 9-figure signings. He's one of the genuine success stories at that price point. And he's also an ultimate professional as well. And I think that price point's never gone to his head. He's never been a massive diva. I think every manager in the world would love a Declan Rice, in my opinion, just because of everything, the desire, the energy, the attitude, and the idea that he's underrated. And all right, people want to banter him because he plays for Arsenal, and people want to take the piss out of Arsenal from time to time. But Rice is, I think at this World, really, honestly, I'd go as far as to say this. I'm being a bit silly. Harry Kane is obviously England's captain, but I think Declan Rice is really the captain in many ways. Declan Rice is that guy in the middle, dictating everything.
I think we need him to. I think we'll need him for ages, isn't it? Easily. Like in terms of it's Odegaard, but it should be Rice.
Yeah, it's a similar
reason for that.
It's a similar debate, and don't get me wrong. Harry Kane is captain, obviously. He's even been vice for Bayern this year. So maybe the point I was more making is around the Odegaard thing. He is Arsenal's guy. At the moment, and if they do achieve these Champions League and League double, I think Rice will be immortalised at that club. Because he's been better than Saka this year. He's been better than Saliba, whatever. He's been exceptional this year. And I think it's really funny to consider the idea that he's overrated, because I think it's just absolute nonsense. He's a world-class central midfielder.
I have nothing to add to that. I totally agree.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I don't know about the Saliba one. Maybe I think Saliba's been really good this year. Apart from that
I think Saliba's become underrated, personally.
Yeah, I wouldn't. Yeah, I'd stick to that. I'd say that. That's fair enough. Okay then, guys. Well, hope you have enjoyed it. Let us know all your thoughts and opinions in the comments below. Who do you think is underrated? Who do you think is overrated? What other players should we do as well? Put some in there, and I'll try to reply to them. Maybe some of the boys will as well. Henry Hill, the lot of people at home want to check you out. Where can they go?
Oh my goodness, you could search on YouTube for Ashcombe Got to Dance 2012, and you'll find a video of me as a One Direction doing it in a dance hall at my Ashcombe school kind of charity dance. Yeah, you can dig into the files and find some old school video of me dancing. That could be quite fun. I can't believe I've just shared that, but you'll know where I work by now. So yeah, thanks for hitting 1,000 subs on my YouTube channel as well. More things to come in collaborations with Saxia Lab.
Welcome, mate. Well done. Still no video on there, so come on, hurry up, Henry.
Yeah, hurry up, Henry.
Ben Bowman, if a lot of people at home want to check you out, where can they go?
New touching grass video out today. We played foot golf. If you went on my little shirt, it was very funny. YouTube, Ben Bowman, THFC. Thanks for 20k. TikTok.
Oh, 20k. Shut up. Whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just, you know what I mean. You know, not too bad. Do it over it. But yeah, TikTok, YouTube, touching grass. Only Tottenham as well. If you're a Spurs fan, go and check that podcast out.
Do all of that good stuff. We'll see you guys next week. See you later. Bye.